Welcome to Kanerika's podcast, The Digital Shift. Imagine spending $10 million and waiting a year and a half to move your company into a state-of-the-art, hyper-modern corporate headquarters.
Right.
Only, on moving day, you realize the architects forgot to build a front door and the plumbing is, well, somehow connected directly to the electrical grid.
Yeah, that is a disaster.
It's a complete structural catastrophe, right?
Yeah.
But that exact level of chaos is the reality for 73% of enterprises trying to migrate their data right now. I mean, they are attempting to move on to these incredibly mature, production-ready cloud platforms like Microsoft Fabric or Databricks.
And they are failing spectacularly.
Exactly. Spectacular.
It's a profound paradox, honestly. The destination platforms themselves, they are the gold standard of technology today. They are highly capable, deeply tested, and infinitely scalable. But the journey to get there, the actual mechanics of moving the data, is completely broken.
Right.
We've perfected the house, but the moving process is basically destroying the furniture.
Which brings us to our mission for this deep dive. We're going to dissect exactly why these massive migration initiatives are collapsing, despite the underlying technology being perfectly sound.
Yeah, it's not the tech's fault.
No, not at all. And more importantly, we're going to explore how a complete shift to an AI-first automation strategy is fundamentally rewriting the rules of execution here. If you are a technical leader staring down a massive legacy system upgrade right now, or just someone trying to understand the future of digital business, you really have to understand this execution crisis.
You absolutely do.
Because data infrastructure is the unavoidable foundation. If you cannot move your data securely and efficiently, well, you simply cannot compete.
Yeah, to understand why these failures are happening at a 73% clip, we first need to look at why enterprises are being forced into these high-stakes migrations right now. The pressure from the market is immense, and it's immediate.
Right.
The IT services sector is seeing a sudden 4.3% year-over-year growth, specifically in application modernization. Yeah, that drastically outperforms every other IT segment right now.
And a localized spike like that, that means something is forcing the market's hand.
Yeah.
Companies don't just decide to undergo massive data migrations for fun,
They absolutely do not. It is painful. But three absolute market forces are converging at this exact moment. So force number one is a hard vendor deadline.
Okay.
Informatica discontinued its on-premise PowerCenter support after 2026. And, PowerCenter is the absolute backbone of data integration for thousands of global enterprises.
Yeah, they built their entire data movement architecture on it over the last decade.
Exactly.
And staying on it now, that means operating your core business logic on unpatched, unsupported infrastructure. For anyone listening who manages enterprise risk, that is a security and compliance nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
You cannot just leave your supply chain or financial data running on unsupported software and just, hope for the best. That forces a migration decision immediately. But there's also the AI factor pushing this too, right?
Yeah, that is force number two, which is the agentic AI pressure. So agentic AI, meaning autonomous AI workforces that can execute complex multi-step tasks across a business, it suddenly ranks as the 7th most purchased enterprise technology globally.
Which is wild.
It is. But here is the catch. To actually deploy these AI agents, you need modern, structured, instantly accessible data pipelines. Legacy systems simply cannot support the data velocity or the integration points that agentic AI requires to function.
So it's like an enterprise purchasing a fleet of futuristic high-speed bullet trains, which is the agentic AI, only to realize their existing tracks, their legacy data infrastructure were built in the 1800s.
Yeah.
You simply cannot run one on the other.
That is a perfect way to look at it. And to take that bullet train analogy even further, right now integrators are trying to manually lay those new tracks while the old train is still running at full speed.
Gee, yeah.
It is bound to derail. Migration has to precede AI adoption, period. And that brings us to force number three, the post-deferral budget release.
Right, because the money is finally flowing again.
Exactly. Capital budgets were tightly constrained through 2023 and 2024. Modernization projects were heavily scrutinized, and frankly, they were often deferred. But now, those deferrals are ending. The accumulated cost of delaying the upgrade has finally surpassed the actual cost of executing it.
Right. CFOs are greenlining these projects today because the cost of doing nothing has become, frankly, financially toxic.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have a hard software deadline, the absolute necessity of building modern tracks for the AI bullet trains, and a flood of previously frozen capital finally being released. The pressure is on. But when companies actually pull the trigger, disaster strikes. Let's look at the numbers behind this 73% failure rate because they were just staggering.
They really are.
80% of these projects exceed their original budgets by 150% or more, and they run an average of 18 months late.
And just think about what 18 months of delay means in today's market.
It's a lifetime.
It is an eternity. A competitor can launch an entirely new product line or AI capability in the time a company is just trying to move its database. And again, the problem isn't that a platform like Snowflake cannot handle the data. The problem is entirely rooted in the execution methodology. 68% of these failures trace back to a single root cause, which is inadequate technical discovery.
Meaning they are scoping the project completely wrong from the very first day.
Yes. They are scoping it from a high-level business perspective rather than an engineering perspective. So traditional vendors typically conduct a surface-level scoping exercise. They count the number of database tables, document the high-level data flows, catalog the names of the reports, and they generate a massive estimate.
Right.
But they completely skip the deep engineering-level analysis of the actual living environment.
Which means all the buried complexities remain completely hidden. The undocumented dependencies, the weird custom business logic that a developer hard-coded into a legacy transformation, 10 years ago and then left the company.
Yep. All of that sits like a landmine until you are mid-flight. And when you discover complex, undocumented dependencies halfway through a massive migration, the entire timeline just halts.
Yeah.
Human teams have to sit down and reverse engineer legacy logic while the clock is ticking. Every single surprise adds weeks of time and massive costs that were never budgeted for.
Let's talk about the sheer economics of that manual migration, actually. Because if you're a CTO listening to this and you're doing the math in your head for your own legacy systems, those numbers are terrifying.
And it truly is a structural cost problem.
Yeah.
Let us say you have a large enterprise with 500 Informatica mappings and 200 Crystal reports.
Okay.
Moving that manually involves tens of thousands of developer hours. Human teams have to write custom scripts, recreate report logic line by line, and test everything individually. At blended vendor rates of, say, $150 to $250 an hour, that single migration scope runs $3 to $8 million.
For a 12 to 18-month timeline. And that is assuming no scope surprises, which we just established always happen. But, let me stop you right there, because this raises a massive logical question.
Okay.
If large global systems integrators know that manual labor scales cost so aggressively and causes over 60% of schedule variances, why aren't they just automating it? The technology for automation absolutely exists.
That is the multi-million-dollar question, and the answer is entirely structural. Large global systems integrators, or GSIs, built their entire business models around labor arbitrage.
Right.
Their economics rely on deploying large offshore delivery teams and billing the client by the hour. So longer engagements mean higher revenue. AI-first automation severely compresses the timeline, and it drastically reduces the headcount required to complete the job.
So full automation is actually an existential threat to their traditional revenue model.
It absolutely is. They have zero financial incentive to fully automate what they currently bill by the hour.
Right.
And we are already seeing the friction play out in the market. I mean, IBM recently cut 8,000 roles specifically through AI automation.
Wow.
8,000.
Exactly. The very technology that compresses migration timelines also compresses the massive manual labor force these integrators depend on to maintain their margins.
Right.
Furthermore, enterprise buyers complain constantly about platform inexperience. Integrators often assign developers who might be newly certified in a cloud platform but lack actual deep production experience. So the client ends up paying exorbitant hourly rates for the vendor's learning curve.
You are paying premium consulting rates for them to figure it out as they go.
Exactly.
And then you discover a year later that the data models they built cause massive performance issues at scale. This labor-heavy model leaves a massive gap in the market. I mean, if you are a massive Fortune 50 company, maybe you can absorb a $10 million manual migration and a 2-year delay.
Maybe.
But if you are in the mid-market, you just cannot. And we at Kanerika saw this massive mid-market gap, which is exactly why we inverted the architecture with our platform, flip.
That inversion is critical to understand for anyone evaluating vendors right now. The mid-market, meaning companies with $500 million to $5 billion in revenue, they have decade-old data infrastructure, highly urgent modernization needs, but fixed budget constraints.
Right.
They are the fastest growing segment of demand, and yet they are the least served by the traditional hourly billing model. They need outcome-based solutions.
So let's break down how an AI-first approach actually changes the mechanics of this, because I want to be super clear on definitions here. A lot of vendors slap the label AI-assisted on their process, but they're still essentially just writing code manually with a slightly smarter spell checker, like an AI coding assistant.
Yes, and that is a crucial distinction. AI-assisted usually means a human developer is still doing the heavy lifting. They might use a tool to suggest a line of code here or there, but the fundamental cost structure remains tied to sequential human hours.
Right.
Flip operates entirely differently. It acts as an AI workforce. Instead of sequential human effort, multiple intelligent agents work in parallel.
For someone who isn't a data engineer, what does that actually look like in practice? How does an AI workforce tackle a massive, undocumented legacy system better than a human team?
Well, think of it like mapping a massive dark warehouse. A human team walks in with flashlights, going aisle by aisle, writing down what they see.
Right, taking inventory.
Exactly. It takes weeks, and they always miss things in the shadows. The AI workforce operates like turning on all the lights at once and instantly generating a complete 3D blueprint of the building.
Wow.
The AI agents analyze the source systems, whether that is old Informatica code or complex databases, and they map out the structural patterns of how the data flows and transforms. What takes a human development team weeks of tedious tracing, Flip accomplishes in days.
And from that analysis, it moves directly to automated code generation.
Mm-hmm.
The human engineers are not writing the new code.
No.
The AI generates the target platform code directly from its analysis. An incredibly complex piece of legacy logic instantly becomes a clean, modern Databricks pipeline.
And it does this while running real-time error detection. It catches data quality issues, referential integrity problems, and transformation errors during the active migration process itself.
Which is huge.
Oh, finding an error mid-flight costs a tiny fraction of what it costs to remediate a broken pipeline after you have already gone live. In this model, the human engineers are there to direct the AI, validate the architecture, and review the output. They do not manually key in the code.
Which shifts the automation percentage dramatically. The industry average for automating migration work is stubbornly stuck under 20%.
Right.
But by using an AI workforce, that number jumps to an unprecedented 60 to 85% automation rate, depending on the complexity of the legacy system.
Which completely severs that traditional link between the complexity of a project and ballooning labor costs.
The theory is incredibly compelling. But anyone who works in enterprise IT knows that these environments are notoriously messy. We aren't just talking about moving from point A to point B.
Definitely not.
So how does this AI automation actually manifest when you hit the real-world tangle of different legacy platforms?
Well, we can look at the documented performance across 12 distinct migration paths to see how it handles different types of complexity. A major focus right now is the Microsoft Fabric Modernization Suite.
Okay.
Microsoft is heavily consolidating its older tools, things like Azure Synapse, Data Factory, and Power BI, into a single unified platform called Fabric.
Right.
It is a fantastic, powerful ecosystem, but getting there requires migrating your legacy tools. For instance, moving old SSIS packages.
Yeah.
For context, SSIS is an older Microsoft tool used for data extraction and transformation.
Yeah.
Converting those legacy SSIS and Informatica systems to Fabric using this automated approach yields a 60 to 65% reduction in timelines compared to a manual baseline.
That makes total sense for the foundational data movement.
Yeah.
But what about the visualization layer? The dashboards that the business leaders actually look at. That brings us to the Power BI migration suite.
Yes. Visualization tools hold some of the most complex business logic in an enterprise. Companies are trying to move away from highly complex legacy reporting tools like Crystal Reports, Tableau, SSRS, and specifically Cognos.
Oh, Cognos.
Yeah. Cognos Framework Manager is notoriously difficult to untangle.
For anyone who hasn't been deep in the trenches with Cognos, what makes that framework manager so notoriously difficult to migrate away from?
Well, over 10 or 15 years, business analysts stack custom definitions, complex calculations, and specific data models inside Cognos. It becomes a Jenga tower of interdependent logic.
Right.
Human teams struggle to unpack it without breaking reports that the finance team relies on every single day. But the AI workforce can read the entire structural integrity of that tower instantly.
That's incredible.
It is. It converts the Framework Manager metadata directly into Power BI data models and translates those complex expressions into DAX, which is the formula language Power BI uses. It automates 70% of those highly complex migration tasks.
And beyond Microsoft, this multi-platform approach is handling massive transitions to the Databricks lakehouse architecture. It is moving companies to Talend as a cost-effective alternative. It is even tackling the oldest, most entrenched code out there.
Yeah, the mainframes.
Right. Migrating mainframe JCL, which is the deep basement batch processing code that still runs many financial institutions, moving that directly to the cloud. But out of all these paths, the statistic that absolutely jumps off the page for me is the transition from older Microsoft analysis tools, specifically SS, to Microsoft Fabric.
Yes.
Not only does our platform achieve an 80% automation rate here, but we are seeing documented query performance improvements of 12x in production.
And we really cannot gloss over what a 12x performance improvement means. That is not just an IT metric to put on a slide. That is a transformative business metric.
Explain the real-world impact of that. I mean, what does 12 times faster actually mean for a business leader?
It changes how a business operates on a fundamental level. It is the difference between a CEO asking for a supply chain report and being told IT has to run a batch process overnight versus querying that massive data set in real time during a board meeting and getting the answer in seconds.
Wow. Yeah.
It turns data from a historical record into an active, real-time decision engine.
So the AI workforce handles the structural heavy lifting. It translates the code, it rebuilds the pipelines, and it optimizes the performance. But we need to talk about the data itself while it is moving.
Absolutely.
How do you ensure the security, the privacy, and the legality of the information while it is in transit?
This is where another major failure point occurs, and it often catches companies completely off guard. 35% of migration failures happen solely because governance is treated as a final phase.
Right.
Traditional methodologies scope data lineage, access controls, and compliance frameworks as deliverables for the very end of the project. They focus on moving the data first and securing it later.
Which means they encounter strict compliance requirements mid-project as massive architectural blockers. They realize, the new system wasn't designed to handle the specific privacy laws their data requires.
Exactly.
And this is exactly why we at Kanerika built governance from day one. You simply cannot bolt security on at the end of a project. Treating governance as a final phase is like building a massive state-of-the-art corporate headquarters, moving all your highly sensitive intellectual property inside, and only then deciding to install door locks and security cameras.
Yeah, it guarantees exposure.
It's insane.
It is the perfect analogy because you have to establish the security infrastructure before the assets ever arrive. The automated approach relies on 3 integrated pillars to solve this. The first is KanGovern.
Okay.
This establishes the governance infrastructure in the target cloud environment before a single byte of data lands there. Policy management, access controls, and data classification are active and waiting on arrival.
So that handles the destination.
Yeah.
Then you need security during the actual move, which is KanGuard.
Yes, and this is critical because data is most vulnerable when it is in motion. KanGuard handles sensitive data discovery, automated masking, and permission inheritance while the data is actively in transit.
Right, because migration is a period of highly elevated security risk.
Massively elevated. Access patterns are changing, and data is flowing across completely new networks. You cannot leave personally identifiable information exposed during that transition.
And then the third pillar is CanComply, which handles the regulatory nightmare that keeps compliance officers awake at night.
Oh, absolutely.
It provides automated reporting for SOX, IPA, and FDA data integrity. It generates the audit trails actively during the migration, not as a frantic scramble to appease auditors afterward. And, this governance foundation isn't just a best practice anymore. In many global markets, it is strictly legally mandated by regional pressures.
Regional dynamics dictate modernization priorities heavily right now. In the U.S., the market is driven primarily by that Informatica 2026 deadline we discussed earlier.
Right, the ticking clock.
Exactly. It is a massive race against the clock to replace legacy infrastructure. But look at Canada. Their market is rushing to modernize ahead of Bill C-27.
For our listeners outside of Canada, what does Bill C-27 actually mandate that forces a data migration?
So Bill C-27 introduces strict new privacy laws, mandatory privacy impact assessments, and heavy algorithmic transparency requirements.
Okay.
It means a company must be able to prove exactly where a customer's data lives, who has access to it, and how an AI algorithm might use it. You simply cannot comply with that level of data mapping if your information is trapped in a black box legacy system. Modernization is literally a legal requirement for them.
Wow. And in the UK market, the competitive landscape is different, but buyer priorities are absolute. They treat compliance capability as the strict prerequisite over delivery methodology.
Yes.
If your governance is not integrated from day one, you do not even get in the door to pitch the migration.
It completely changes the conversation around evaluating vendors. If you are a technical leader listening to this and you are assessing your own organizational readiness for a massive data migration, you have to look past the slick sales presentations and focus on the actual mechanics of execution.
You need a highly specific vendor evaluation checklist. So what are the non-negotiables a company should demand before signing a contract?
First, you must require fixed or outcome-based pricing. Do not accept time and materials contracts for migration.
Right.
If a vendor is billing hourly, they are absorbing none of the financial risk for scope creep. And as we discussed, they have absolutely zero incentive to utilize automation to finish the job faster.
Okay, second, you have to demand platform-specific automation rates. A vendor needs to prove they can automate above 60% of the work for your specific source-to-target path. Vague promises of, AI assistance are not enough.
Exactly. And third, mandate day one governance integration. If their proposed methodology treats security, data masking, and compliance as a phase 3 deliverable, walk away immediately. The risk is just too high.
As we at Kanerika constantly emphasize, a delivered migration that requires 12 months of post-go-live remediation is not a success.
No, it isn't.
The execution capability has to match the technological opportunity. You cannot celebrate turning on a shiny new Microsoft Fabric or Databricks environment if your engineering team is going to spend the next entire year frantically fixing broken data pipelines, resolving performance bottlenecks, and patching security holes.
The cost of post-go-live remediation destroys whatever return on investment the new platform was supposed to deliver in the first place.
Right.
But when you utilize an AI workforce to automate 60 to 85% of the work, you eliminate the massive variability of human error that causes those post-go-live disasters.
It fundamentally changes the equation of enterprise transformation. You are no longer held hostage by the complexity of your own legacy systems.
The technology to solve the execution crisis exists right now. It is simply a matter of abandoning the outdated manual labor models that the industry has tolerated for far too long.
Which leaves you with one final critical thought to ponder as you look at your own organization's roadmap. If data is universally acknowledged as an enterprise's most valuable asset, literally the lifeblood of modern business, why has the industry tolerated a 73% failure rate in moving it? As we cross into the era of agentic AI, the enterprises that survive and dominate won't just be the ones with the best algorithms. They will be the ones that finally abandoned manual migration, embraced the AI workforce, and built the right tracks for the bullet train.